Welcome back to Streaming Media West 2019. I'm Tim Siglin, contributing editor of Streaming Media Magazine, founding executive director of the not-for-profit Help Me Stream, and along with this gentleman here, a co-host of SM Advanced Forum, which is a monthly webcast, or SMAF as we like to call it. Since you wear hats, and I'm not going to ask you to change hats, let's talk about SMAF quickly.
Cool.
So what is SMAF for those who might not know about it?
So for those of you who've been following streaming media for a long time, you might remember that there was a mailing list which predated social media by about a decade or something, which was just an email list that people who were interested in more advanced streaming techniques could subscribe to. And that mailing list really formed the heart, in my mind, of the core community of webcasters and early streaming engineers.
And your inbox would get flooded with, as people went back and forth on topics.
Dialogues, and it was actually really convenient. It was there, and the topics were always good, and lots of good pithy responses to
And as an aside to that, I signed up last week for the first time for an actual mailing list for Openbsd.
Okay.
The ARM architecture, ARM64. Except I misread the thing, and instead of sending the subscribe ARM to Major Domo at openbsd.com, I sent it to ARM at openbsd.com. So of course, everybody on the list got my subscription request, and a number of them were very gracious. And I said, is there any way to get rid of it? And one of the guys is like, the internet never forgets. Yeah. So anyway, so the
mailing list was kind of the heart of it, and actually still within the streaming media community. There are tens, if not hundreds, of people who were on that list who form the sort of fabric of most of the global streaming infrastructure around the world these days. And we've gone from being kind of bedroom fanatics to vice presidents of global organizations as streamers exploded. So it was a very interesting community. But for whatever reason, it was wound down, I don't know, maybe 2008, 2010 sort of time. And I really missed it, because that was my first social network, really, of a niche interest. And so we waited, I don't know, 3-4 years to see if something would ever come of that. And I rather cheekily registered SM Advanced Forum.
Very nice.
And then to make sure it wasn't going to cause a rub the wrong way, invited Eric to co-host it, and myself and Mark East. So what's about 2.5 years ago we started? Because I already do my Thursday night radio show, we just decided we'd do it on the first Thursday of the month. So from my wife's point of view, I'm tied up broadcasting one day a month rather than
multiple days,
than several days.
And we started with Google Hangouts, and of course in the meantime Google Hangouts has been deprecated.
That's right. Yeah.
So now we're on a system
which is a wonderful story in its own right. So we didn't have a remote conferencing bridge, an MCU model, if you like.
Right.
And so over this summer I rebuilt, I used a part of open source tools to build us a conference bridge, which means that we can carry on with pretty much the same technical delivery model. And we invite 2 guests on every month, just to make sure people don't get bored of hearing from just you, me, Eric and Mark.
Well, and oftentimes not all 4 of us can be there.
And exactly, and then so we got 2 guests. Well, we started off with just having 1 guest to shake the bag. And then we had Diane Struckner from Women in Streaming Media, and DataZoom, but from Women in Streaming Media on. And we thought actually a bit of positive discrimination, or whatever it's called these days, we thought we'd actually give a second guest chair to the Women in Streaming Media group to make sure that women were.
And that was right around the time Women in Streaming Media was actually starting up. So now for almost a year we've done where it's a male guest and a female guest.
Yeah, and it's good. It's really good to see that. And in fact, I'm really proud that on International Women's Day, the edition in March, it falls on SMAF, first Thursday.
Okay.
So we decided we're going to hand the entire SMAF show over to Women in Streaming Media.
Oh, very nice.
And let them do an all-female transmission, which I think is great. I think it really added some variety and some good, valuable insight that sometimes gets glossed over in the technical services sector.
And I think 2 other quick things to add on this. First of all, we're not beholden to anybody because we try to do it all on open source solutions. Secondly, we don't actually take sponsors for that, so that
it is just a bit of fun.
The conversations are the types of conversations you would have had on a mailing list or that type of thing in the past. So.
And we try to avoid it being fixed topic and promotional, so we don't promote the guests' companies. if they want to bring them up in the conversation, that's fine, but it's not about company X is promoting product or service Y. It's about, guys, you're experts in the industry. What's your opinion on this topic? And then we flip through whatever topics come up, and it's always fun. And then we put it out as a video on demand and as a podcast as well afterwards.
So a slight segue on that. You did a presentation today. Was it on Multicast?
IP Multicast, yes.
Okay. And that's something you've been interested in for longer, probably, than the SM Advanced Forum mailing list.
Oh yeah,
existed.
My kink, if you like, is I just find IP Multicast one of the most intriguing potential capabilities that the internets have that we've never realized and taken advantage of.
And so for somebody who might not know that streaming is unicast and multicast is this different thing, just briefly describe what multicast does and what the benefit is from a scalability standpoint.
So most people will be familiar with how unicast is delivered, and it's always best to think first of all about live streaming when you think about multicast.
Sure.
It's just a little bit of an easier paradigm to look at. And basically what happens is today when you have multiple users watching a single stream, the center of the network or a proxy server somewhere in the network, which would otherwise be called a CDN, acts as the point of aggregation of all those connections, or those separate thousands of users connecting to the stream. And as your audience grows, your network demand at that point of concentration of all the traffic grows as well. So
because if it's a 1 megabit stream and 100 people watch it, that's 100 megabits of capacity that's consumed.
And so what IP Multicast does is it works out that there's many people wanting the same piece of data, and it forwards that one packet of data, or one GOP of video, or whatever, however you want to sort of segment it up. It forwards that on all of the interfaces on the router where there is a downstream subscriber. So you only send the chunk of data once over the network. So it makes no difference if you have one or a million users connected. You still only send one stream over the network. So it's incredibly efficient when it comes to scaling live. You see it in common use within private networks for doing IPTV.
Sure.
It's been really successfully deployed for that purpose for a long time. But the problem is when you want to hand a multicast outside of that initial network onto other networks, so over the public internet, coordinating the routing of that, it took maybe a decade after sort of the web had taken off to really nail the problems in the protocols. So it wasn't until about sort of 2000 that you start to see multicast protocols that didn't have adverse unintended consequences on the network really arrive. And by then the internet had largely been built, and although the capability is latent, it's out there, it's not a new technology that needs to be rolled out, it's not generally turned on or configured in the routers.
And there had been some real and potentially misinformed decisions around the fact that UDP and the way that works versus TCP, that TCP was kinder in terms of the way that it sent traffic across the net.
TCP it's a great protocol for shared network infrastructure because it backs off and it shares the capacity across the networks. UDP doesn't care, so it pushes the data through anyway.
And if you had a capacity problem, that would be a problem. These days, we don't seem to really have capacity problems.
No, and actually, outside of IP Multicast, UDP has had a bit of a resurgence over the last couple of years with all the reliable UDP models that have appeared from the likes of Carver and Aspera, Matama, Zixi, and so on. Because it allows you to use more bandwidth. The only problem with it is it's not very kind in a shared network environment. It does flood the network. So you have to make sure that the IP link you're using isn't really being used by anyone else.
So you've talked about the history of that. What are the practical discussions the industry needs to have today about multicast? I mean, it's nice to talk about it sort of in a historic perspective. We are still trying to figure out how to get to scale.
So there's a couple of things that have happened in multicast space in the last sort of 3-4 years, which have brought it back up, and it was quite invigorating for me, going to many of the sessions here, and actually multicast is popping up as a term much more often.
Nice.
So some of the key values that it brings in an encoding environment where you have a source video being made available to a number of encoders to transcode and deliver onto the network.
Right.
If you deliver that stream as a unicast to each of the encoders, you have to have a failover strategy if the connection's lost from the source or there's a problem with the encoder. We, as ideas, we build a lot of live streaming platforms, and where we can, we try to get our clients to deliver us a multicast transport stream, or at least a multicast source, because if an encoder fails, we can stand up a new one instantaneously and pick the multicast up, and it gives you a much higher availability strategy.
The failover is in the encoders rather than in multiple.
Yes, well, you don't have to shut down a session and open up a new one when you have a fail. You just tune into the multicast and pick it up.
Right.
So it gives you much higher availability.
Does that also allow a stateless scenario? You know how obviously in traditional media servers you had to set up a state between the origin.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay. So, and that's why it's so good for the multicast doesn't know who's listening.
Right. And that was Jose intentionally photobombing. All right, now, so what other benefits, just quickly, and then we'll wrap this up.
For multicast? For
multicast, yeah.
So the other things that have emerged, there's a lot of talk I'd group them together with ATSC3 and LTE broadcast.
Okay, right.
So they're new layer 2 technologies, which are being rolled out in ATSC3's case for traditional broadcast,
over the air.
For LTE broadcast, it's being deployed in the tail end of LTE4, and it's being spoken about as if it's going to be kind of native to 5G. It's not quite at that stage yet. So that's reinvigorating the discussion about multicast, but
and it makes perfect sense for mobile networks, which are closed networks, to do something like multicast.
Yeah, where you've got some degree of internal management. And then the other thing that I think is really important is bit indexed explicit replication, which is better known as beer, and that's now been sort of ratified by the IETF as a standard. And it's following a general trend in computing to move state from the network that's doing the forwarding of all the multicast, where you need some memory in each router to remember who's subscribed to what. Now that state is being moved up into the packet header, so that the packet itself carries the forwarding map, if you like. And that means that when a network receives an inbound via multicast stream, it knows which egress routes that should be forwarded out of, which means that you simplify the need to have multicast routing and multicast state stored in the network itself,
and replicators and the like.
So that's going to make some degree of a change. But there's other. It's you need to hear the whole talk, because there's other economic complexities with making networks more efficient that make them economically less lucrative. And it seeds an interesting and I think reasonably challenging
discussion for CDNs.
Perspective that I have, which is that telcos and CDNs like to tell you they're congested, that their bandwidth is scarce, because it puts a premium on the value that they can deliver. If they told you that they had abundant capacity and they could multicast live streaming and scale to any order, it would diminish their cost
economic per gigabyte or terabyte.
Scarcity breeding.
Well, the good news is the presentation will be up on streaming media sometime in the not too distant future, so we'll definitely point people toward that. Dom, as always, good to have you.
Cool. We'll see you first Thursday of the month every month.
I was going to say, I won't shake the other hand.
No, don't do that. It was a production accident.
It had nothing to do with Brexiteers.
No, it could have done. Let's just leave it there.
And we'll be right back with our next interview in just a moment.
Do that again, Steve. Let's just time that right. There you go.